Welcome back to Educator.com's English grammar course. This lesson is on verbs. Let's get started. All right, now this lesson, basically the whole thing is going to be kind of an overview. We have an entire unit on verbs later in the series. So today we're just going to go over the basics of verbs, what they are, what they do, how they change, and how that affects meaning. So we're going to ask to begin with, what is a verb? We're going to look at the three major kinds of verbs. And we're going to look at how verbs vary, how they change according to person, their basic form, and tense. And then we're going to look at base verbs and helping verbs, which is a slightly trickier area of verb use. All right, what is a verb? Well, the English word verb comes from the Latin word verbum, which means word. So a verb is a word. This is actually kind of indicative of the way English speakers think about verbs, because verbs express an action or a state of being, and every complete sentence needs to have one. You can have a sentence in English that is exactly one word long, like stop, and that one word will be a verb. If you don't have a verb in your sentence, you don't have a sentence. So, in a lot of ways, they are the most essential part of the English language, so it's really no surprise that we get them from the word for word, because they're the words you really need. Now, the form of a verb may vary according to person and tense, among other factors that we'll get into. All right, there are three major kinds of verbs. There are action verbs, which describe an action, like run, or speak, or cook, or think. Then you have linking verbs. Linking verbs connect nouns or pronouns with complements, other nouns or adjectives or adverbs. And linking verbs are things like to be, or to appear, to become, or to seem. Now, the way you remember linking verbs, a linking verb is any verb you can replace with an equal sign. So, for example, in the sentence, I feel happy, you could say I equals happy, and you'd have approximately the same meaning. So you're using a linking verb. Then you have helping verbs. These are usually forms of to be or to have that help other verbs to form special tenses. Linking verbs always show up with another verb right next to it to form tenses, and we'll get to tenses in a minute. So, for action verbs, we have a sentence like, I run down the road. Run is an action verb. It's something you do. Very simple. For a linking verb, we have, I feel happy. Feel is our equal sign verb. And for helping verbs, you have, I have been waiting for you. Now, waiting is an action verb. It's something you do. But have been is a helping verb that helps to form a new tense out of waiting. We'll get to tenses. All right. How verbs vary. We're going to start with person. Now, verbs vary according to the person that's performing the action and the number of people performing the action. So, first person singular is I and me. The way you remember this is if you are the last person on earth, you can say I am lonely. First person singular, I. First person plural, of course, would be we and us. Now, second person singular and plural are both you. So if there's a second person on earth, you can say, you are not alone, because I'm here. Third person singular is he, she, it. And third person plural is they. Now, the way you remember third person is if there's you left on earth, if the speaker is left on earth, the person you're talking to is left on earth, then you can say I and you. And if there's a third person, then you can say he, she, it, they, and be talking about them behind their back. That's how you get third person. Now, what does this have to do with verbs? Well, all these pronouns, first, second, and third person, affect the form of the verb. Depending on whether it's the first person, the second person, or the third person doing something, the form of the verb changes. As I say, it's not just for pronouns. So, let's look at an example. I am excited, but we are confused. Notice here that we went from first person singular to first person plural, and it changed. You are in the wrong line. That could be either singular or plural. He is over there, third person. Sarah is happy, third person again. And the Hawaiian Islands are far away, third person plural in that case. All right, let's look at how this affects an action verb. I walk to school. You walk to school. He walks home. Notice how that S got added in there. She walks through the park, but we go to plural with they, and it becomes they walk along the beach, and the S goes away. So the form of the verb changes according to the person performing the action. All right, let's take a minute and go over the basic verb forms. These are the ones that are used to form just about everything you can possibly do with a verb. The base form of a verb is the first person singular present tense. It's I do something. You add to this form to create the infinitive. So, I answer the phone. I, right now, at this point in time, I, by myself, answer the phone. So, answer is the base form of the verb to answer. Now, the infinitive, which is the to form, that's basically what we use to describe the abstract concept of a verb, the Platonic ideal. All you really need to know, though, is if you're going to form the infinitive, take the base form and stick to on the front. I knock on the door, infinitive to knock. And I practice the piano, infinitive to practice. I cry, infinitive to cry. Pretty simple, right? All right, now we have the present participle form. This is the base form with ing added on the end. One quick word, if the verb ends with a vowel like E, you generally take the silent E off and put the ing on. So, answering the phone, you just stuck ing on the end of the base form. Knocking on the door. Practicing the piano. Notice that practice ends with E, so we take the E off because it's silent and we put ing on there. And crying. Very simple. All right, now we come to the past participle form, which is slightly more complicated, but not too much. For a regular past participle form verb, you use the base form with ed added. So, I answered the phone or I knocked on the door. Now, if you have a regular verb ending in E, you just add D. So, I practiced the piano. See, that E is back and we've got a D there now. And for a regular verb ending in Y, you remove the Y and add IED. So, the Y in cry goes away and it becomes cried. Okay, now we're going to look at tense. Tense is one of the biggest ways that verbs change. Tense comes from the Latin tempus, which means time. So, tense indicates the time in which an action was performed. Also, the degree to which it was completed. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, there are a few major tenses. We have simple past tense, simple present tense, simple future tense, the perfect tenses, and the progressive tenses. Let's look at those in detail. Simple tenses. He waited all day. I wait for the bus every morning. My dog will wait by the door until I come home. Now, this is the same base verb, wait, to wait, but the time in which the action takes place is changing. He waited all day. That happened in the past. That's the simple past tense. It's also the past participle form of the verb. I wait for the bus every morning. That's the simple present tense, and it uses just the base form. My dog will wait by the door until I come home. That's the future tense, and it uses the helping verb will to form the future tense will wait. Now, here's a perfect tense. Perfect tense describes actions that are complete or perfect as of the chosen time. So the present perfect tense, the action is complete as of now. The future perfect tense, the action is complete as of whatever point in the future you're talking about, and so on. So, he had waited all day. As of some point in the past, the waiting was done. He had waited. Present perfect tense would be I have waited for the bus every morning. As of now, my waiting is complete. My dog will have waited by the door until I come home. When I come home tonight, in the future, the dog's waiting will be complete, will be perfect. All right, now we come to the progressive tense. Now remember, all of these tenses get their own lessons later in the verb unit. This is just an overview. The progressive tense describes actions that are in progress or imperfect as of the chosen time. This is why it's also called the imperfect tense, as distinct from the perfect. So, he was waiting for his friend to come. As of some point in the past that we're talking about, his waiting was ongoing. He was waiting. I am waiting for the bus right now. As I speak, I am currently waiting. It is ongoing, in progress, progressive tense. My dog will be waiting by the door when I come home. Future progressive tense. So at a certain point in the future, the dog's waiting will be actively going on. Notice that we use the present participle form. Waiting, 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 sometimes with helping verbs like was, am, and will be. All right. Now that we've done a pretty basic overview of verbs and how they vary, let's see if you can find the verbs in this passage and figure out what kind we're dealing with. The Ugly Duckling is a story about a duckling who suffers because he is terribly ugly. The duckling surprises everyone by growing into a beautiful swan. Many scholars believe the author of The Ugly Duckling, Hans Christian Andersen, wrote the story about himself. Andersen felt ugly and alone while he was growing up, but he became one of the world's most beloved authors. I believe children will love The Ugly Duckling forever, and we will be reading it for many years to come. All right, take a good look, pause the video if you need to, find the verbs, and identify their forms. And here we are. The Ugly Duckling is linking verb, third person singular, present. Is a story about a duckling who suffers. Well, here we have an action verb, once again, third person singular, present tense, because he is, linking verb, terribly ugly. The duckling surprises everyone. Now that's an action verb, again, present tense. Note that when you're talking about events in a story or a work of art, you pretty much always use the present tense, even if the story is very old, like the Ugly Duckling. He surprises everyone by growing, oh, there's that present participle form, into a beautiful swan. Many scholars believe, third person singular, present tense, action verb. The author of The Ugly Duckling, Hans Christian Andersen, wrote, here we have third person singular past tense, and it's an irregular verb, which will be covered in a later lesson, the story about himself. Andersen felt, another irregular verb, and linking, ugly and alone while he was growing. Okay, here we have the helping verb was and the action verb grow in its present participle form, growing. But he became, another irregular past tense, one of the world's most beloved authors. Notice that beloved, even though love is a verb and beloved implies that he received love, it's not actually a verb here because it's modifying authors. So it's acting like an adjective. Got to watch out for things like that. I believe children will love, there's a future tense, The Ugly Duckling forever, and we will be reading, future progressive, it for many years to come. So there's your basic overview of verbs. If you'd like to explore them in more detail, check out Unit 2 in the syllabus. And that takes care of this lesson. Thank you for watching. Educator.com.